Welcome to Goadflix, where I spoil a movie and talk shit about something I've watched recently. Today I'm going to be talking about 2018's The Night Eats the World. Zombie films are absolutely one of my favorite genres, but any horror fan will tell you the archetype is heavily oversaturated. Now, truth be told, I don't need a zombie movie to be good for me to enjoy it, but that's also why I try to separate my personal fun factor from whether or not a film is good. When I watch a zombie movie today, there are two primary factors I'm looking for. Did this movie add anything to zombie horror as a whole? And if it didn't add anything new, did it achieve a better execution than a predecessor with the same intent? With that in mind, let's dive in. The Night Eats the World starts at a party where it's implied to us that the main character is recently single. His ex is hosting, and also his ex is fucking other people already. The character is not coping well. Zombie movies traditionally come in three different flavors when it comes to their opening sequence. The outbreak is happening, the outbreak happened long ago, or our character just missed the outbreak and now they're catching up. I like to refer to these three types as zombie movies, and zombie films. And this is just my personal speculation, but I think which of those options is chosen tends to lend itself more to the tone and purpose. Films which center on the outbreak tend to be zombie forward films. It's about the fear, the adrenaline, the danger, the creatures. It's a zombie movie. Films that place the outbreak in the past tend to be about the sense of death, humanity, humility, society, longevity, and inevitability. It's a story about the bigger picture. A zombie movie. And films where the character just misses the outbreak tend to be about the character in particular, their growth, their development, and the catalyst is a zombie outbreak as much as it could be an economic depression, a loved one lost in an accident, or a crisis of personal purpose. A zombie film. This movie opts to go for door number 3. Locked away in the room, our main character / emotional cuckold wakes up to his city laid waste, and we get to spend our next 15 minutes world building and learning the rules of the universe. Our first encounter with our zombies tells us a great deal about them in only a few seconds of screen time. The undead remain dormant and in stasis when stimuli isn't present, resting on the stairwell until something grabs their attention. These are runners, but not necessarily sprinters. They are not savage, super strong adrenaline beasts, and they don't have greater cognition or memory. Losing sight of our main character for only a few seconds is enough for them to factory reset without some confirmation of his presence. If they can't hear you and they can't see you, then you may as well not exist. More on that later. The last and most unique thing about our movie's creatures is they are quiet. No moaning, groaning, screeching, shrieking, bitching, or complaining. When death comes for you, it will be the sounds of footsteps and pitter-patter before you meet your fate. Through the window, our character sees his first signs of life, and their failed attempts at survival. He now knows these things are ravenous, dangerous, indiscriminate, and most importantly, plentiful. Also, as a side note, the family he watches get eaten are some of the dumbest motherfuckers. They are walking embodiments of what not to do. Make a ton of noise by honking your horn as if the family can't hear the car start up, and then after the wife gets the daughter in the back seat, rather than just diving in and saying, "Drive!" she tries to get up front, which gets her snagged. Then, rather than cutting his losses and flooring it, he gets the whole family snacked on. The lesson learned: fleeing is death. The last thing our character learns that cements our stakes is the scope, getting to the roof to see that the city has indeed fallen. If running was possible, where would we run to? He begins to clean his environment to plan for the long haul when a shotgun blast rips through the floor. His downstairs neighbor was Kurt Cobain the whole time. Small world. He breaks through the floor and yells to ensure nothing comes running. Our lesson's at work. He's exploring the house with a weapon. We get to see our infected in true stasis, and that also tells us something new. As the character sneaks up to close the door, the infected don't have heightened senses. In fact, their awareness is quite dull. We spend the next 10 minutes or so snacking, conserving, counting, marking, and isolating cleared rooms, getting a sense of resources and how infested the building is. We also get a mostly limp and lame zombie locked up in a grate. His name is Alfred, but I'm going to call him Rob. This also tells us something about our character. He struggles with accepting death. If it were me in this situation, I'd be testing all sorts of shit. Breaking Rob's fingers, removing Rob's eyes, seeing how durable these things are before they die. Before I even expel a round, do they bleed out, or is it headshots only? But our character leaves it contained, choosing to reflect to indulge in tapes, music, and the remnants of human existence. Time is passing. We see facial hair change. He's shifting through the rooms, restless and seeking purpose before lashing out via music. Then we get what I think is a reference to the rooftop whiteboard scene in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, where our character is shooting zombies with a paintball gun and marking off the targets. He is desperately searching for anything to keep his mind occupied and sane. Making abstract art with trash and inventing his own musical instruments like a member of the Blue Man Group. We see him honoring the dead and, again, trying to hold on to the rituals of his old life. At night, he has nightmares of being quietly attacked and consumed, the feeling of dread seeping in that death is always around the corner. The facilities of the apartment are breaking down. He's collecting rainwater and talking with Rob out of loneliness. He's so desperate for connection that when he sees a cat in the street, he risks his life trying to lure it in, getting injured in the process. In fearing that he too might turn, he prepares to take his own life, but falls asleep instead, his sanity slowly slipping as he lashes out at Rob in anger, berating and projecting his own unresolved traumas onto him. Trying to get a sense of the danger in the area and express his rage at this force keeping him confined and isolated, he again plays the drums to draw them in. He screams and wails, and we see the growing numbers as more bodies have gathered in the growing horde. And in my eyes, this is the shot of the movie here. The mass of silent, gnawing forms clawing upwards, so close and yet so far away, and a flip on the common conception of a wailing monster and a silent survivor. Our protagonist apologizes to Rob, and in the night his nightmare becomes manifest. Noises at the door, and he grabs the strap. This is a stand your ground state, no solicitors. He pops off his shot and, shit, it's a person. And she ain't looking so good, boss. He attempts to save her life, and then we go through a passage of time, learning about this mysterious woman. She tells him the place is going to be breached, tells him that Heights is safest. All of his routines are now shared between two souls, singing, making music, sharing rations and stories, but the food is drying up and she insists they must move on, telling him he needs to jump to clear the gap. They are of two minds, and just when you think he's about ready to cave to her demands, the shoe drops. And if you guessed, hey, she's a corpse, you'd be right. He has pictured a life with this corpse in desperation. She is simply the manifestation of his negative thoughts, of his own predicament. He takes her climbing gear, and he makes the decision to finally cut the past loose. He burns the tapes that he originally came to retrieve, his history and connections with his ex-girlfriend and old life. He releases Rob Zombie, who surprisingly doesn't immediately try to eat him, instead roams back to his apartment. The horde breaches the door because of a fire alarm and a chase ensues. Losing the shotgun, he finds himself trapped in the elevator that Alfred once occupied. He ascends the elevator and uses the fire and smoke as a shield to make it to the roof. And even though he eats shit in the jump to the next building over, he survives. But this building too is occupied by the dead, so the question becomes, will he just move rooftop to rooftop until eventually his journey ends? The film ends with the sounds of a bell tower and him staring out at the city, a sea of roofs that are all the same. It's beautiful and serene and haunting all at the same time. The end. The Night Eats the World is going to get a 7 out of 10 for me. On the surface, it's a zombie film centered around loneliness, growth, and grief, a manifestation of isolation and the struggle to both find purpose and survive. It adds to the zombie genre by giving us the scariest silent zombie I think we've ever had on screen. But it's also a film that reminds me of two movies I personally love, which is Swiss Army Man and De La Morte de la More. And I'd argue that really the whole zombie angle is just a shell for a writer's journey through the real topic, which is love. A relationship keeping him trapped to his possessions and memories, the fear of dying alone, and yet the dire need to find connection, overcoming his feelings and deciding to move on from his past relationship and onto new relationships or new buildings, which may break his heart all the same. And those thoughts and those fears eat at us while laying in bed at night. It eats all of us. It eats the world. Thanks for watching.